So in this umpteenth reboot of the Ninja Turtles franchise, can it really still be fresh or interesting or entertaining? Well, let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This is the newest film from directors Jeff Rowe and Kyler Spears. Okay, so this film, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, is the newest adaptation, newest interpretation of the popular TMNT franchise. It's co-written, of course, by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and in essence brings the franchise into a much more realistic, without they're mutant turtles, so it's not as realistic. But what I mean is a more realistic feel where these turtles are actually look and feel like teenagers. Now, I'm not saying the other versions didn't look like or didn't act like teenagers, but what I mean by that is they look young. They look like individuals that, are wary of the world. They're kind of awkward and so on and so forth. They're very fresh behind the ears, but they want to be accepted because, of course, Splinter, who's voiced by Jackie Chan, has basically instilled upon them that the human race will kill them or will put them down or, they will run them off like freaks. Well, in the process of everything, they don't believe that, and they go off and they meet a character named April O'Neil, famous character from the series, and then they come across these, what we would call the antagonists of the series, which, of course, include people like Superfly, who's the main villain, and, of course, Bebop, Rocksteady, Mondo Gecko, and so on and so forth, Leatherhead, and stuff like that. And it basically becomes a story about these characters trying to stop Superfly, as well as trying to be accepted in a world that, as we've learned, acceptance can be very difficult for people who are very different. And in the process, it's very much a kind of real, like almost realistic story about just individuals that just want to be normal in a lot of respects. But it's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise or a movie, so therefore, they have characters like Leonardo, of course, Michelangelo and Raphael and Donatello, and it basically is the kind of an origin story about these characters becoming who they eventually become in the franchise itself. So it's interesting to see at this point the kind of status of the reinvention or reboot or new interpretation of these franchises like TMNT and Transformers, because they're starting to be created and starting to be written and produced by people who grew up like myself with these franchises. And it's been doing that for quite a while, but the point of the matter is it seems like Seth Rogen and, of course, Evan Goldberg are huge fans of the TMNT franchise, so therefore it makes a lot of sense that they would want to come in and kind of, pay homage to the 1980s show or the 1990 film, but adding their own kind of comedic kind of style in a lot of respects. So I wasn't really surprised when I heard that they were making this film, but as the more and more kind of I heard about it, they wanted to make it in the style of, the original series, but they also wanted to kind of update its kind of modern norms, and they also wanted to use the Spider-Verse kind of feel when it comes to the character animation and kind of, being a little more edgy in a lot of respects. So I give them a lot of credit for that. And then they get this cast, which include people like Byrne and John Cena. Seth Rogen, of course, plays one of the characters, Paul Rudd, Gincarlo Esposito, Ice Cube, Brady News, stuff like that, Hannibal Buress. And I felt like this movie was going to be a very under the radar kind of special film. And after films like I said, like Across the Spider-Verse, stuff like that, I love when these people take chances and actually try to upend the status norm. That's why some of my favorite animated films in the last few years are films that actually try to do something different. So when the trailer appeared for this TMNT film, it looked really cool, to be fairly honest. From what I've read about it, it was more of like trying to be like a comic book in a lot of respects, and kind of the animation style, and like a sketchbook, like say you're at school in high school and you were like doing sketches of what you think the characters look like. It was something that it was really unique. And then you see like kind of how like the moon in the background kind of illuminates like light flashes and stuff like that, or when somebody's talking on the phone, you can actually see the lines of the phone of the voices and stuff like that. So it was just one of those things that I'm like, this looks really cool. And so it premiered and had like people see it early, and they're like, oh, this is incredible. This is like a really good adaptation of the TMNT franchise. And I'm not one to like go, okay, sure, you're probably talking out of your butt or something like that. And so of course they had an early screening for the public because they wanted to build up, interest to this film through social media and stuff like that. And so with that said, ahead for my honest review. So do you find yourself out there in the world trying to find a book to read? Everything is not speaking to you. You want to find something a little more over the top and crazy and silly, unlike the typical tropey books that are out today. Well, personally, I found a book just for you. This book, which is called J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written by Johnny A. Mann, is the story of a writer from that comes back to his hometown. He's a noir writer, and he tries to get back with his high school crush, as well as dealing with a serial killer in his hometown. And as you expect, if you read Johnny A. Mann's material before, it's over the top, it's silly, it's graphic, and it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of heart and inventiveness put into it. But it's also a book that, is unique for its own right, and it's a book that I definitely recommend. If you read anything else that he's written, it's something that you might find fun, you might find entertaining, and I highly recommend it. So, definitely check it out. It's currently on Barnes & Noble's online retail store. But once again, that is J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written once again by Johnny A. Mann. And it's a book that I highly recommend. So definitely check it out, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys. I really, 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 really like this movie. Is it perfect? No. I think the last probably 30 minutes of this film suffer just from weird kind of tonal pacing, but I think this is a film that might be one of the best in the franchise, to be fairly honest. And I haven't watched like the TV series or anything like that, so I'm kind of basing it off the movies, but this is a movie that had a lot of care and love put into it. I think everybody who voices a character in this movie does an absolutely fantastic job. I think the four young kids who play the turtles they feel like they have a lot of chemistry together. Apparently they all were recording in the voiceover booth together. So there's that dynamic, feel to it where they feel like they're, slowly coming together as a group, and they feel like they work well together, and they feel like they're brothers. And it's a really nice thing to see when four individuals really put a lot of care and effort, and they really try, and it really shows. These are young kids, so I'm sure they were goofing around a lot. But the nature of them being teenagers and having to portray teenagers on screen, especially in turtle form, the awkwardness and the weirdness is there. It's even though they're Ninja Turtles and mutants, they really have a great effect of just being kids, and it really shows. And it really helps that all four of these kids were working together on the same booth, working, doing their voiceover and stuff like that. But it's helped by the nature of the fact that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg are just really great screenwriters. They know the idea of what makes things funny. They know what makes things work. They know what makes things tick. There is a running joke in this which kind of goes a little too long, but it's one of those jokes where it's funny, then it stops being funny, but then it becomes funny again, which is great in comedy. But you can just tell that they just kind of got what this franchise is and what it means to people, and the idea of these characters, they make mistakes, but they have, a heart to them, and what they want is actually truthful and respectful. And I really love that. I really love that they got Jackie Chan to play Splinter, because there's an awkwardness to trying to raise four baby turtles to become adults at some point. And then I love the fact that they make Splinter feel like he's aging, like he's old, because he always felt like he had wisdom, but he never felt like a flawed character. And here he truly does. He feels like a character that makes mistakes and wants the best for his sons in a lot of respects. And, when he's so afraid to let him out into the open, but he kind of has to learn like they do, which is really great. I love the idea of just growing up and just kind of learning, as parents do, and learning as kids do, and all that great stuff. And then adding the fact that they actually made these turtles teenagers is a really great thing to do. And like they said, they made April a very interesting kind of version of April O'Neil. She's a young high schooler as well, but she's an individual that's also an outsider like these turtles. So the kinetic energy that they have with one another is really great. And I just really found the dynamic between all these characters just really fascinating and really interesting. And it works. It really does. It really feels like a very well thought out, well produced, version adaptation of this very popular franchise, started of course by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And then when it comes to the villains of this film, it's a mixture of the comic book or the animated series or the original movies in a lot of respects. I mean, it's a group of characters, cavalcade of villains, I guess you could say, where they're actually more dimensional than I've ever seen in this franchise. I'm not saying they haven't had their dimension, but when it comes to the idea of Bebop and Rocksteady and Leatherhead and Mondo Gecko and so on and so forth, they're individual characters that were always the bad guy of the week, to be fairly honest, and they always got beat by the Turtles. And here, there's actually much more interesting kind of things that are going on with them. There's, doubt, and there's, are we doing the right thing? The only character that doesn't seem to understand what he's doing was wrong is, of course, Superfly, who is very similar to like Zod in a lot of respects when it comes to like the franchise. The Michael Shannon version, where you understand why they're doing it, but it's not the right thing to do. And I love Ice Cube as the main villain because it's great to see them go outside of like the Foot Clan and Shredder and stuff like that. I just kind of love how these characters kind of nurture themselves when it comes to the villains, because each individual character, because you see it in the trailer, when they meet the Turtles, it almost feels like there's a brotherhood relationship there. And I just kind of love how that plays out. I love that these villains are more complex than they've ever been in their entire life, or at least in the franchise. And they're all voiced by great actors who do a very nice job of just being different, being unique. You don't really feel like they're a one note, like, very focused type of thing. They're like the Turtles, where like they kind of question everything in the world, and like they feel like they're being, struggling against what they need to do. And I just kind of love that. I love that idea. I love the fact that what they do with that. The unfortunate thing is like the story of what Superfly is doing is not necessarily well thought out. Sometimes it's flawed in a lot of respects because it feels like very tropey, to be fairly honest. And I think it's helped by the fact that these characters are dimensional, but it feels like it gets thrown by the wayside. And I kind of wanted more out of the story, to be fairly honest. And it's weird. It really is weird because it really feels like a very normal thing that they do in these types of movies. But once again, you can kind of forgive that because the characters, every character in this movie is just, there's so much love put into it, so much kind of heart that you kind of forgive the flaws of this movie, and I give it a lot of respect for that. Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor did the score, and though I do think it is like a weaker score, it is a very unique, interesting score with a very different take on the Turtles theme. And if you go into the soundtrack listing for this film, it's quite the interesting list. It's something. Some of the titles of the tracks are really interesting, but. With that said, it also is very, very funny. There's a lot of funny stuff in this movie. You can definitely tell it's a Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg script because they are very crass in their humor sometimes, but they are also just very, very funny individuals that have that very silly kind of childlike humor that really works for this franchise. And there's several running jokes. Some work better than others, but they're really funny. And once again, to kind of end out this review, if you're worried about this film, if you love the Ninja Turtles, I absolutely recommend this film. I think it's one of the better films in the franchise. And though it won't be ever top the 1990 film, I think there's enough there. I think there's enough heart there that it really is a special film. And the animation is gorgeous. Like I said, it looks like a sketchbook. It looks like, if you watercolored or use chalk or whatever you use, it's kind of incredible that we are getting films like this, because I think before Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse, there weren't films like this. And now we're getting a whole bunch of like really special, really unique type of animated films that really make this franchise, make these franchises soar in very new ways. So overall, definitely recommend. Definitely one of the more highlights of the year. And TMNT Mutant Mayhem is definitely a recommendation from me. So there you go. Anyways, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Comments below. What is your favorite TMNT film? What is your favorite TMNT animated series? Who's your favorite character? Anything you want to talk about? There we go. Let me know. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell. Top the fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.